Shantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Bhadram Karnebhihi Shunuyam Devaha Bhadram Pashyema Akshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangaistushtvagum Sastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitanyadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu Om Shanti 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Excuse me. So, in the last class, we were studying the meaning of Karika number 6 of the first Prakarana. And I thought that there's a few things that I want to bring out in the previous Karika number 5, which we have already done. But I just thought that I will bring out some points about Karika number 5. So let's look into that a little bit. So I was thinking, I have a suggestion for you. Remember, I had mentioned that it would be very nice if you can start to perhaps teach Vedanta to some groups of people. Not as a way of expanding or propagating, but really for your own benefit. This is what I had mentioned. And I have not had any response to that, which is, which is okay. But I do have another suggestion. Instead of actually, going ahead and teaching, what I think would be very useful for each one of us to do is to write down the essence of Vedanta for ourselves. Just start to put together your own, I wouldn't say a diary, but more like a compendium of things that formulate what I would call the tenets of Vedanta. You can call it tenets of Hinduism if you want to, Vedic knowledge. But I think it would be very nice. I have done that also, and it's been very useful to write things down and arrange it in a manner that they all kind of make sense with respect to each other. So this is what I would call the essence or the tenets of Vedanta. I think it'd be very nice if you begin that task and add to it from time to time as new classes come up or your own ideas from the previous classes. And if you want, you can, at some point in time when you feel you have a complete, somewhat of a more complete version of that, you can send it to me. And I think at some point in time, I will give you, maybe not now, but a little later, as to what it should be. What I think, from my perspective, what the tenets of Vedanta would be. So, I've already mentioned a few of them in the last few classes. And I'll add to that list today. This is what I was thinking of. Excuse me, when I was thinking of going back to Karika number 5. But like for example, I had said that the Vedantic view is that our problems about the way we view ourselves and the world around us uh, is a mistake. There is nothing to be done except to understand what the mistake is. So this is one of the tenets of Vedanta. We had seen that. Then if you remember in the last class I had mentioned that one of the tenets is that there is no real creation. There's no creation. It's only a manifestation. Unmanifestation, manifestation. So I think this could be, can make the list of the tenets of Vedanta. So anyway, that's my suggestion. I just think that it would be, for your sake, it would be a very good thing to do. Otherwise, you listen to classes and then you keep going, and I don't know to what extent you're, because I think each one of us has to do vichara, as I had mentioned before. We have to do all of the classes and books and this, that, or the other can only help you to do your own vichara. And until you do the vichara about what's going on, where are you, who are you, what's the past, what's the future, if that vichara alone will fructify what you're trying to do. Otherwise, all of this will be not effective. So to do that vichara, kind of writing things down so that you would only write things down that you understand. Don't just write it down because I say it or the book says it. But if you understand uh, the importance of it, then it fructifies your vichara. Yeah. Enough said. So that's a suggestion that I would like to make. All right. So another Vedantic tenet is the following. This is what I wanted to talk about. And that is the nature of change. Nature of change. What is change? What kind of changes are there? What's the importance of change? And vis-a-vis that, what is the importance of non-change? How do they relate to each other? What is the connection? All of this vichara, so which you can call it nature of change, is the beginning of this tenet of Vedanta. Okay, so with respect to that, let's look into this. Fundamentally, Vedanta points out that there are two kinds of changes. One is, in the language of English, I just make up that translation myself, irreversible change and reversible change. So in the Sanskrit language, it is the former is called Parinama Karanam. Parinama Karanam is irreversible change. Parinama Karanam, we all know, Most changes in that we see in our world are irreversible changes. That something, you a, a glass gets broken, irreversible. You cannot put it back. Okay, milk becomes yogurt, irreversible. Food gets cooked, parinama karana, irreversible. So, a lot of the changes that we see are parinama karana. Then the second type of change is what is called reversible change. And this is what is called vivarta karana. Technically, it's called vivarta karana. And we have talked about it before. Examples of this, of course, are clay becoming pots. Now, the pot itself is parinama, but the clay becomes vivarta because the clay changes into a pot but not permanently. It can, in fact, it doesn't change at all. But even if you were to look at the change, even there from that standpoint also, it is not a irreversible change, it is a reversible change. Actually, there is no change whatsoever, but there is a reversible change. If you want to insist on some change. And so even in the Vivarta Upadana, Vivarta Karanam also there are degrees. There are degrees. So one can argue that a clay becoming a pot does have some change. So this is one level of Vivarta. Then there is another level of Vivarta which is really the one we have to be focused on, is where the rope appears as a snake. In that perceptible change, the rope never really changes like a clay changes into a pot, right? It never changes. You can at least accuse the clay that, hey, I thought you were just a lump and you changed. And the clay would say, kind of, yes, I agree, kind of. But you cannot do that with the rope. You cannot tell the rope, hey, you changed. The rope said, what? I did? When? He says, well, you look like a change. He says, that's your problem. I never changed. So even in the Vivarta, there are degrees of Vivarta. This is what I'm saying. Okay. So far, are we together on this? Okay, now, here are some further tenets of this whole topic of the level of the nature of change. Let's go further. If you look at the transactional reality of life, and the underlying aspect of that, of course, is Vyavaharika Sat. Vyavaharika Sat is one category, and Paramarthika Sat, non-transactional reality. One is transactional reality that we are involved in in doing transactions in our life, where we are talking, listening, all of that is called transactional reality. But underlying all of that is Paramarthika reality, which is the unchanging Atma, the conscious Jnanam. And the conscious Jnanam is common to all transactions. You as a listener also is conscious of yourself as a listener or a watcher of this video. And I, as a talker, speaker in this, is also based on the same consciousness. So that consciousness is called Paramarthika Sat. Paramarthika means the final. If you were to look at the the gradations, this is the final one. And this is what we have to understand, how, in what manner. But be that as it may, for the time being, there are two categories that we can look at, which is Paramarthika Sat and Vyavaharika Sat. In Vyavaharika Sat, having done so, let's go forward. In Vyavaharika Sat, there is both a Parinama Karanam, there is both, leave aside the word Karana, Parinama means change, reversible change is Parinama. So in the Vyavaharika Sat, we should see that there is Parinama as well as Vivarta. Right? Again, in Vyavaharika Sat, we see the presence of both Parinama and Vivarta. We already took examples of that, so it should be very clear that a milk becoming a yogurt is Parinama, whereas a clay becoming a pot is Vivarta. So in transactional life, Vyavaharika Sat, we find both of them are present. Okay? In the case of Paramarthika, Parinama is not there. Only Vivarta is there. This is the distinction. In Vyavaharika Sat, both Parinama and Vivarta are there. In Paramarthika Sat, only Vivarta is there. There is no Parinama. And in the Paramarthika Sat, the Vivarta is not the lower level of Vivarta. Lower level meaning a clay becoming a pot. That is also not there. A higher level of Vivarta may be there. And the higher level of Vivarta means even though the Atma never changes, but it can appear to change. This is exactly what the situation is, that fundamentally I never change. I have never ever changed. Never. Anadihi. There is no creation. It's the same Paramatma, same Atma, same Brahman, whatever you want to call it. It's the same conscious Jnanam that has always been there. and it can never possibly change. It's like saying space can change. Space cannot change. And this is even subtler than the space, because the space also has consciousness, has to support space. Nothing supports consciousness. It is the very fundamental aspect of the whole creation. Never changes. But the funny part is, it appears to change. Appears to change. It is exactly like saying the Akasha can be polluted. The Akasha space can become blue. The Akasha can become dark. It can become lighted. There can be all kinds of changes that are perceived changes, but it never changes. So similarly, in the case of the Atma, yes, perceptible change is there, but not real change. Not real change. So we cannot violate the principle, which is that in the transactional reality, in the life of transactions, change is possible. Two types of changes are possible. In the real reality, no change is possible. So this is really a tenet of Vedanta that should be written down and understood very clearly. Okay. Now let's go further. In fact, there is another way to express this, which is also very key in our encapsulating this truth as we proceed further in our study. Okay, so that also is an aspect of this. The Paramarthika Sat is what is called Chetana. Chetana means conscious. The nature of conscious being, jnanam, is Paramarthika Sat, right? So it's called Chetana. So the word Chetana should be recorded in your mind as the nature of the self, the Paramarthika Sat. Contrasted to that is inert, which is Jada. Inert, which is Jada. So, inner means Jada. Jada means inert. So we have two words. One is Chetana, one is Jada. So now we can apply the principle of change to these two qualities again. Same thing. I'm just changing the words. But those are important way of describing Paramarthika Sat and Vyavaharika Sat. Chetana can never change. It may appear to change, as we saw earlier, but it never changes. There is no parinama possible, and in fact, there is no vivarta possible. See, we can even go further. Even vivarta is not possible. How do we mean that? So the Chetana is not even like clay that does have some change, even though it is a reversible change, but it does have some change. But in the case of Chetana, you cannot even have that change. Paramarthika Sat means that it's a higher level of Vivarta. Higher level of Vivarta meaning, I'm just saying on my own, the Shastra doesn't say higher level or lower level. I'm just separating those two just for talking purposes. That in the case of Chaitanya, even a transactional change is not possible, but it is possible that due to ignorance, it appears to change. And it's a mistake. So they go back to the very fundamental tenet of Vedanta, that really speaking, the change in the self is a mistake. It is no real change. And that mistake has to be understood. In Jada, Parinama is possible. Even though, as we will see later, the entire Jada also is not real. Because Jada also is nothing but a copy of the Chaitanya. Again, we can go back to the example of a dream. So in a dream, all these things should be really understood step by step so that we can verify that in our own mind. What I said was that there is no such thing as Jada, pure Jada, inert. Even the inert is also nothing but Chaitanya alone. What? How? Dream. In the dream, supposing you see a table, which is a Jada. So you say that, I was resting my arms on the table in the dream. Is there any inertness in the dream? No. That was just a assumed inertness, because the very nature of the dream is Chaitanya. It is just perturbation of the mind that separates a Jada from a Chaitanya. So even in the Jada, there is only nothing but Chaitanya. That's exactly what we will see as we understand the reality of the Atma. That even transactional reality, even the Parinama also is not really there, but it appears to be there. And that's what arrests our mind. We do transactions and we feel, this is Parinama, this is Vivarta, this is etc., etc. Okay. If that is understood, let's go further. In the transactional reality, as we had already talked about, there is both Parinama and Vivarta. There is one form of Vivarta which should be appreciated. Some forms of vivarta are very obvious, like the clay becoming a pot or a metal becoming ornaments. Those are clear, right? Less clear but important to understand. In order for us to see the principle of how this is done is pointed out in the verse in the Karika number 5. Let me read the Karika number 5 one more time, because we will bring out all this discussion with respect to what the Karika number 5 says. So let's go back to it for a minute. What did it say? It says, Trishu dhamasu yat bhojyam bhokta yascha prakirtitaha Veda etat ubhayam yahatu saha bhunjano na lipyate. Is what it says. And the meaning of that was that one who is said to be the experiencer and that which is said to be the experienced in the three states, Trishu Dhamasu, Jagrat Avastha, Swapna Avastha, Sushupti Avastha. One who knows both of them is not affected while experiencing them. This is what was said, right? Okay, let's look at the aspect of parinama and vivarta. Okay, so one thing I had mentioned just a few minutes ago, that even though we are aware of the principle of vivarta in our transactional life, just like in the case of clay becoming pots, we are aware of that. There is another insight into the principle of vivarta, even in transactional, in Vyavaharika Sat, that we are not aware of, and we should be. So this is what is pointed out by Swami Akhandananda in the commentary on this number 5. And it points out that, look at this. This is an important principle. If you look at the 5 great elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, from which transactional reality is kind of created, is made up of. That's what it is. The life as we see it, our experiences, etc., is, if you analyze the fundamental aspect of that, you see, this is why this is an interesting thing. There are modern scientists who say that Vedanta says there are 5 indivisible elements in the world: space, air, fire, water, and earth. This is what Vedanta says. 5 indivisible elements. It's called Pancha Mahabhuta. Mahabhuta means that, so the word Maha is important here, because Maha, as we will see in a minute, Maha means fundamental, indivisible, relatively indivisible. Finally, the indivisibility is only in the Atma. But even at the Vyavaharika level, there are some fundamental, just like basic particles. So the modern science says that, they are all looking for basic particles. What is this whole thing made up of? So you have, of course, the periodic table where there are basic elements like iron, oxygen, etc., etc. And now I guess I don't know how many there are. There used to be 92 at one time, then they discovered there's 108, maybe has gone more. So something like 110, 120 of them. So they all say that Vedanta has only five, and that's all old thinking. They don't know much about science. And the modern science has now discovered, because of all their research, that the elements are many more than five. So don't listen to Vedanta. This old religious stuff. They don't know what they're talking about. That's not true. Not true. Because, and I actually, by the way, this kind of so-called scientific analysis has been there in thousands of years in India. This is what is called the Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas. They have all analyzed Paramanu, Anu, Paramanus, so the various basic principles of elements and how do they combine together. All of this was done long time ago. In and through this whole work, what Vedanta says is that there are five basic elements that are Mahabhutas. And all the things that you see are called Bhautika. Bhutasya janmaha iti Bhautika. It means that five elements combine together in various forms to make your life's experiences. But if you analyze them, they are really only five elements and they are indivisible. You cannot go any more, less than that. This is what Vedanta says, five Mahabhutas. So now let's go back to what I was pointing out, that even in the transactional reality, there is a very interesting vivarta that we should be very aware of for our own sake. All of this is really for understanding our own sake. What do you mean by our own sake? Because the clear thing in verse number 5 is saha bhunjano na lipyate. Even though you are transacting, you are not affected by it. This is moksha. This is what we have to understand. How is that possible? So, the Shastra gives an example of how this is possible. And the way it is possible is, even at the Pancha Mahabhuta level, the same principle applies. What principle and how does it apply? Let's look at that. So take fire, Agni, as one of the Pancha Mahabhutas. As an example, it applies to all five of them. By the way, as far as Akasha goes, that is very obvious. That even though it contains things, but it is not affected by them. That's very obvious. Everybody can easily see that. Space is not, as one of the Pancha Mahabhuta, it's the most important Pancha Mahabhutas. So, for example, gravitational forces are not affected by pollution. The sky becoming dark never really becomes dark. The space remains the same. So the non-lipyate, non-affected by one of the Pancha Mahabhutas is very obvious. We know that. But the same principle applies to all the Panchamahabhutas. How? So the example of Agni is given, fire. Beautiful example. So there it is pointed out that look, suppose there is a fire. And in California at this moment, we have so many fires going on in the forest. So many lives at dangers. Fire people, you begin to realize, just talking about that for a second, how important the fire people are. They're highly paid and very deservedly because they really endanger their own life. It's a very important skill to contain fire. Fire has been the destroyer of many cities in the past. A whole city gets completely burnt, right? So the effect of fire, the involvement of fire is enormous and very palpable, very easily seen. Even if you just take a piece of wood and set fire to it, what happens is that after a while, the fire engulfs it, burns it, reduces it to ashes, and the wood is gone. Parinama karana. It has now changed irreversibly. But look at this. Does the fire change its own form? Can you say we have had so many fires that there is no more fire left in the universe? How ridiculous would that be? It doesn't happen. So the fire has a quality of affecting things because the nature of the fire is to burn. That is the nature. It is true to its every Panchamahabhuta has an innate nature. It does something which is very natural to it. So the fire's nature is fire is never cold. And it's the color of fire. In fact, this is exactly what the color of the mine is not as accurate. This is all I could get from India at one time. But if you look at our Swamis, they get these clothes that are the color of the fire. So knowledge is supposed to be, it's a fire that burns all the ignorance. That is the nature of the clothing of the Swamis and Swaminis. So the nature of fire is it never leaves its nature of being hot and being able to burn. But look at this part. This is the vivarta. Even though it gets involved, it doesn't change its real form. What happened was that the piece of wood also has some warmth and fire inside of it. And if you just put if you light up a fire inside the wood and just keep it there, that fire gets ignited and affects whatever you are trying to do, but the fire itself is unaffected. If the fire also gets affected, then the whole principle of the whole creation will collapse. Look at the beauty of it. So this is true for all the Pancha Mahabhutas also. We saw that in the case of Akasha. In the case of Vayu, same thing is there. The Vayu's job is to create wind, and it aids in the fire in the forest one. But the Vayu remains the same, doesn't change. Vivarta. It is not Parinama. That's what I was saying. That's what I was pointing. This is what not I was saying, but our commentators have pointed out. Here's what they pointed out: that even in the Vyavaharika Sat, the important the Pancha Mahabhutas, the important elements work in the principle of Vivarta, and the highest level of Vivarta. Highest level of Vivarta because they function the way they are supposed to, because that's what transactions are all about. Then we need to have warmth, we need to have light, we need to have fluidity, we need to have solidity. All those things are necessary. But the fundamental parts of the Pancha Mahabhutas, even though they impart those qualities that are needed for transactions, they themselves do not change at all. Na lipyate. So this is what is said is that even in the case of, just like in the case of, so this extra information is given by, I'm sure that Adi Shankara also had commented on it, because certainly the commentators here in Swami Akhandananda's case, and I'm sure in Swami Dayanandji's case also, although I'm not reading his book at the moment, point out that even not only at the Paramarthika level, even at the Vyavaharika level, the same principle of Vivarta applies at the highest level. That the things are happening without really changing. And then we apply it to our own self. So this is what he says, Trishu Dhamasu Yat Bhojyam Bhokta Yascha. What does it say? Trishu Dhamasu Yad Bhojyam Bhokta Yascha Prakirtitaha Veda Etat Ubhayam Yastu Na Bhunjano Na Lipyate. So he says, even at the transactional level, this principle can be seen to be real. What principle seems to be real? That even though they seem to be involved, they are not involved. Fire remains the fire always. Whether you invoke it for a particular case or you don't, doesn't any matter to it. Air remains the same. It is not really, it doesn't have any partiality. Like in the case of rain, in the case of water, as we have seen, that there may be two neighbors, one whose children are getting married, an outdoor wedding, and another one who is sowing some rice for a new crop. They are both requiring different aspects of the rain. The person whose wedding is taking place is, oh Lord, please don't let it rain. Next door neighbor, the guy says, Lord, I am sowing rice seeds, saplings. Please make sure there's plenty of rain. I need a lot of water. So the water doesn't take any sides. Based on it, just whatever is necessary, it just does it, which is for the whole world. This is what is just amazing, that the more heat there is, the more evaporation comes up, more rains come up, and you have devastation in the form of floods. But the rain is necessary, and so it just comes up. Whether you utilize it, not utilize it, it's up to you. So it does not lipyate. It has no lipyate, means it does not get affected by it. None of the Pancha Mahabhutas are affected by it. In the same manner, we should see that if this is true even in Vyavaharika Sat, which is Jada, all the Pancha Mahabhutas are Jadas. They are reflecting consciousness, they are not the originator of consciousness. But in the case of Paramarthika Sat, where I am the Chetana Vastu itself, there is no involvement. And how is it no involvement? This is what which will be detailed out. But even now, Gaudapadacharya ji takes it after having looked at the first 6 mantras, where all the 3 states are pointed out. So now he says, Trishu Thamasu. In all the 3 states, if you see that sometimes you are the Bhojyam, sometimes you are the Bhokta, you can be both. It's like saying sometimes you can be burnt by the fire. Sometimes you are not burnt by the fire, you are the originator of the fire. But the principle of fire never changes. Just like that, similarly here also, in all the 3 states, what you go through as an experience, if you find you are the same person that is going through all these various experiences, but you are none of the experiences. Like the fire is not, the burning of the fire is associated with some substance which is combustible. But the fire itself is at a higher level, unchanging as a principle. There's always fire in the whole universe, unchanging. Similarly, it says, please understand that you are, even though you are seemingly getting involved with, and we have so many different experiences. We have experience of, in our waking state, we have different experiences. In our dream state, we have different experiences. And within each state, we are both the experiencer and the experienced. This is, as an experiencer, I am the karta. I will do this. Now I will do this. This is the experiencer. And experienced is the bhokta. Oh, that didn't work out very well. Or that was wonderful. The same Atma is both the experiencer and the experienced. Yat Veda Ubhayam Tu Bhojyam Bhokta Chu Yaha Saha Na Lipyate. While Bhunjanoha Na Lipyate. Not as though after the experience. No, while you are experiencing, you are not affected by it. And so all of this comes from an understanding of the very nature of change. This is what I started to say in the beginning. And so the nature of change is an important tenet of Vedanta that should be understood and noted. Okay, so that's what I wanted to do about going back to Karika number 5. Then in the remaining time, we still have about 15 more minutes, so we can still do quite a bit more. Let's go back to verse number 6, shloka number 6. So if you recall now, shloka number 6 begins an analysis of creation, right? 6, 7, 8, and 9. All four of them review the nature of creation. So what we have just gone through was the nature of change, but now in the next 4 verses there is a nature of what is called creation. What is creation? So we had already pointed out that the way the whole universe works is that things do not begin the way we think about it. The beginning you can change, you can see that in the transactional level, but at the paramarthika level, and even at the cosmic vyavaharika level. So let's look at that. At the individual vyavaharika level, you could say there is a change. Somebody is born, somebody dies, there is separation, there is sukha, sukha dukkha, all of that is possible. But if you look at the samashti level, the cosmic level, even in the vyavahara, there is really no change. Why? Because things have always been in some form or the other. Fundamentally, there is no change. There may be some transactional change at the vyashti level, but at the samashti level, there is no change. It's not as though, so even in, we can ask a question, well, what about dissolution, pralaya, 100 billion years? Isn't there a beginning? No. We had pointed out that really all that happens there, even there, just like it happens between the night and the day, that there is an unmanifestation in the form of a seed form and a manifestation in the form of an expression of the seed. That is fundamental to the whole creation. There is no real creation. So we had pointed that out. Then, so this was both from the stand of the truth as well as anecdotally, as an experience also. All of those things were pointed out. Then I had mentioned that Swami Akhandananda takes a technical view of this as well, which we did not cover in the last class. So let's do that now. So in the technical level, This is all from the Shastra. It's not as though Swamiji has come up with his own ideas. No. All of this is simply a restatement of the Shastra. Shastra says there are four possibilities of creation. Four possibilities. So, on the two categories, one which is called Sat. Sat meaning Satyam, meaning non-change, fundamentally non-changing, is called Sat. The opposite of that is Asat, which means change. One which is not there before and there now. Okay? Look at this is a more technical way of looking at it. Means that we have to really elevate our thinking to understand the technicality of this. So two states, Sat and Asat. Now, there are four possibilities out of these two states. One is, from Sat, another Sat is born. Sat means what is called Sat. What is not there is Asat. Right? That's one way to look. Just leave aside the more fundamental view of what Sat is. But what is would be called Sat, and what is not there is called Asat. Let's just look at a simple way of looking at it. Okay. So there are four possibilities. From Sat, another Sat is born. Or from Sat, Asat is born. These are two. From Sat, another Sat. And from Sat, Sat is born. And from Sat, Asat is born. And just the opposite. From Asat, Sat is born. And from Asat, Asat is born. Right? You can see these four possibilities. Sat, 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 Asat. Asat, Sat, Asat, Asat. Okay. Now let's examine that. What is the nature of creation? Okay, let's look at the first possibility. From Sat, Sat is born. Does it make sense? Where is the birth? There's no change. From Sat, which is already is, you cannot say Sat is born. Sat cannot be born out of Sat because it has no change. It's already there. Dismissed. From Sat, Asat is born. No. Because when you say from what is born what is not, that is nonsensical. Because Asat also is. So that violates the very principle of Asat. There is no such thing as Asat. Because if the Asat is, that is Sat. You see? So, the birth of Asat from Sat doesn't make any sense. So there cannot be any change of Sat turning into Asat. Not possible. Now let's go to Asat as the very source. Now we have an equal number of problems. one which is not there, how can something which is be there be born from something which is not there? This is what the scientists are grappling with. That there was nothing there first and now something came up. Hey, if nothing was there, how can something come out of nothing? Nonsensical. Not possible. Okay, now then the final one is from another asat. From one asat, another asat is born. One which is not there, something is born which is also not there. Another nonsense. So really speaking, there is no other possibility. We have covered the whole ground with these four possibilities. And so there is no real creation. All you can say is that there can be a semblance of Sat. So there is a postulation, there is an assumption, there is a pretension. That may be possible. Just happens in dream. It looks like there is something going on when there is nothing going on. That's a possibility. In fact, this is what the entire Shrishti, the entire world consists of. Fundamentally, that is what is going on. There is an appearance of creation when there is no creation. This has to be understood. This has to be grasped and to done. That is the fundamental aspect of Vedanta. That in fact, Brahman or Ishvara there is a possibility through the Maya Shakti of making it look as though something is changing. So, taking a rope to be a snake is a possibility, even though there is no real change. Taking it is a possibility. Similarly, taking myself to be a limited person rather than fundamentally a non-limited person is a possibility, but not real. And how it is a possibility and how I can understand that this is not true is the subject of Vedanta. This is what it's all about. This is what we are studying. And Swami Akhandananda points out so beautifully that even if the world appears to be non-Brahman, it is still Brahman. Not as though it is going to become Brahman. It was always Brahman. Really speaking, I would say this. You and I have always been someone who is unaffected by the world. Even while we are affected by the world, we are unaffected by the world. This is why we are unaffected by any state of being. We are unaffected. We were a child, we were unaffected by it, independent of it. As we grow older, we are unaffected by it. By our birth, we are unaffected. In the future, if the body were to collapse, unaffected, 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 unaffected. No matter what, who we are, whether it's you or I, the same Atma, the same Sakshi, unaffected. Even though we are appearing to be affected, we are unaffected. Bhunjano na lipyate. While we are experiencing the change and being affected, we are not affected. This is the reality, this is the truth that will be fundamental to the understanding of ourselves, who we are, where we're going. We're not going anywhere. We've always been who we are, will always continue to be who we are. All we have to see is, what is this idea of going away? Where are we going? All of that has to be seen to be just nothing but a dreamlike thing. We're not going anywhere. Nobody ever dies. No one ever dies. It's like saying Paramatma dies. Paramatma is me. Cannot die. That's just like accusing God that you're dead. Not possible. This is what we have to see. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Just nothing but being like. Good to see you all. Yes, Ganesan, that is exactly right. It's very fundamental to the Vedantic view that, and that Swami Dayanand used to say, we are the problem, we are the solution. We should not waste any time in blaming. We can't even blame ourselves. Like, for example, we say, why did I do that? I should have done this. should have, would have, it's not very helpful. I think that I just didn't know. Just didn't know. What can I do? And so really my own self-ignorance is the issue, and the analysis of what is ignorance, how is it that I didn't know, is the solution. That's what needs to be done. And so to put the blame on anything specific is just delaying our final solution. Yeah. Very nice to see all of you. There's a new name that I don't recognize, Anita Kumari. Uh, Anita, if you could send me an email to introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it. My email is vijaykapoor@gmail.com, Kapoor with a double O. And if you could let me know your background, I would appreciate it. All right, thank you so much. All the best. Zarina, have you already shifted over to your new house? Anyway, all the best to you. All right, good. Hari Om.